Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked a little bit about Colorado going into their second year under Dion, kind of an idea of how that is a interesting ship to be on right now. A little bit unsteady, but could be plowing forward and dominating the Big 12 this year. So tons of different directions they could go this year, but broke down a little bit of what could possibly happen and what I kind of expect to happen, to be totally honest with you. But let's jump into some spring game previews. There is tons of stuff happening on Saturday, and let's start with the game that is nationally televised. The Michigan Wolverines will be at noon on Fox. Definitely a game that everyone is looking forward to, especially the Wolverine fans, but this is a game that with the storylines coming into it kind of write themselves, right? You talk about, championship hangover. It is a very real thing, especially in college sports. It's something they're hoping to avoid this year, especially with a coaching change. Not going to be an easy thing to do, but we'll be able to see at least what this team looks like. Are they still playing with the same speed, the same intensity that Jim Harbaugh brought pretty much every single day? And then 18 guys off to the league. How do the new guys look? How do the replacements look? How do the younger guys stepping into big roles? How are they kind of making that adjustment? And are they making it smoothly, or does it look like there's a considerable gap between last year and this year's team? And then which quarterback stands out, if any of them? The question that I think everyone is wondering right now. It seems like Alex Orji has had a very good spring, but you never really know until you get in front of live ball and have an idea of what he looks like with, guys running straight at him and receivers running all over the place and just a lot of hectic things happening around him. So definitely will be an interesting thing to watch. But what I'm watching for in particular is kind of mainly the back end of this defense minus Will Johnson. I know exactly who he is. I'm not worried about that at all. Losing Rod Moore to injury and losing Keon Saab to the portal were two big-time losses. I think those were guys that were going to be big-time players for them this year, and they're going to need other guys to step up. Now, there's plenty of talent in that room, so I'm not overly worried necessarily, but there's definitely something to keep your eye out on as we go through the game tomorrow. I expect the defense to win the day, but does the back end make a couple of plays in that, or is it more of a defensive front kind of domination type thing? How does the O-line bounce back from losing 5 of the top 6 guys? Kind of goes right in hand with that D-line that we just talked about. I think there is a lot of worry that, losing guys like Zach Zinter, losing guys like Drake Nugent, there's such an ability there to know exactly what you're getting from those guys day in, day out, because they've been there for so long and they started for quite some time and they've done really remarkable things there. So losing guys like that and having to replace them, no matter who you're replacing them with, and they have plenty of talent in that room, obviously, but it's going to be tough for them to be as productive as they were a year ago, and they might have to be more productive with the quarterback that is going to be behind him, maybe not being as decisive as someone like J.J. McCarthy, who was so good at getting the ball out of his hands and putting it on target that it might not be the strength of the next guy. So definitely something to watch there. And then who are the wide receivers that stand out the most early, and who is the quarterback hitting them? Because I think there's an idea in this offense that you pretty much just have to set it up in a way where you put the quarterback on the field that puts your passing game in the best situation possible. I think you will have a good running game. You have Donovan Edwards, you have Khalil Mullings, you have Alex Orji. Even if he's not a starter, you have him in different packages that you can utilize him in, I think. But you have to be able to throw the ball. You just have to be able to get the ball in the hands of the wide receiver, stretch out the defense, and give your running game a shot, right? So I think it could be that, maybe Alex Orji looks really, really solid in terms of, doing the run game and making everything go very smoothly, but maybe he's not quite hitting the wide receivers quite as well as Jack Tuttle is, or quite as well as Jaden Davis is. And it'll be really interesting to watch if that, plays a part in that quarterback battle, because right now it's definitely Alex Orji's job to lose, but passing is not necessarily his strong suit. So it'll be really, really interesting to watch if he can, show up on Saturday and really prove some people wrong. But let's move on. Only an hour after that, we have the Notre Dame game. And I think the storylines for this one are very interesting. A new transfer quarterback from a North Carolina school in the ACC. So they're kind of running it back from last year. And last year was not a bad year by any means, a 10-3 year for them. But they do have a couple of things they need to improve on. One of the big things I'm watching is will they be more dangerous at wide receiver? They just absolutely have to be. I think Jaden Greathouse is going to take a huge step forward this upcoming year and will be a big part of that offense. Also, who's taking the place of Audric Estime, and can he fill the shoes? Obviously, you have someone like Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, so plenty of talent in that room, but Audric Estime was a huge piece of this team, and leadership-wise was a huge piece, so definitely someone to watch there. What I'm watching for kind of in particular is this back end. Just like Michigan, I think with Xavier Watson, Benjamin Morrison, you have that foundation, but you need 5 guys to make it all work, right? So it'll be really interesting to see, especially losing both outside corners. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can kind of bounce back from that and handle that the way that I kind of expect them to. Xavier Watts is one of the best safeties in the entire country. Benjamin Morrison, one of the best nickels in the entire country. So they'll have plenty of help around them, but you really need those outside corners to be big-time players if you want to keep up with some of the passing attacks that they're going to face. And then CJ Carr has been getting a ton of big-time praise. He's been getting comparisons to Jimmy Clausen and comparisons to Brady Quinn throughout his time in spring in Notre Dame, and I really am interested to watch him, see if he is as advertised, and see if he can be the guy that they really want him to be in the future. Obviously does not have to start this year, but definitely someone that could elevate that position for Notre Dame going forward. And then we talked about Jaden Greathouse. Has he taken that step forward? It sounds like he has in the spring, but definitely a lot of stuff still up in the air for him. At the same time, kicking off is Texas A&M. Definitely want to watch out for this one. The storylines write themselves, obviously. A start of a new era with Mike Elko taking over as the head coach over Jimbo Fisher. A very, very interesting and kind of nasty divorce there, but I think better for both parties, to be totally honest with you. How does post-injury Connor Wegman look is something that I'm watching very, very closely. And you had tons of guys transfer out. Is that a good or a bad thing? Sometimes when you lose guys, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You kind of wave them goodbye, wish them best luck, and move on with your day. Some guys, it's a really big deal. So it'll be really interesting to watch. More specifically, definitely watching that D-line. They lost Walter Nolan. They lost LT Overton. Still plenty of talent in that room. There's no two ways about that. But definitely 2 guys that they really were counting on going into this year that we will have to watch, see if any other guys have stepped up throughout the spring. Is Connor Wegman playing with confidence and with freedom? He's learning a new offense this year with Colin Klein coming in over from Kansas State, and it's going to be hard on him, but I think the best version of him is a gunslinger that just kind of goes out there and lets it rip. Just lets the ball kind of flow out of his hand, because he's such an elite thrower of the football that I'm going to be really interested to watch him whenever he does get that chance to kind of step into the spotlight. And if he can do it comfortably, then Texas A&M gets very interesting very quickly. And then how do the players respond to the new coaching staff? I love Mike Elko. I think he's going to be a huge success, but there's always that question whenever you hire a new head coach and he brings in his staff. How do they kind of respond to the new way of things around campus is always a very interesting thing to watch. But let's move on to the 2 p.m. slate, and we got Texas to start here. The storylines are pretty obvious here, right? Texas is quote-unquote back. You know, they were in the playoff a year ago and were able to be at the table. Now, was that a flash in the pan or a sign of what's to come? That's really the question that's going to be answered this year. The big other answer is they reloaded that wide receiver room with tons of talent from the portal, Isaiah Bond being the main among them, but can they live up to the hype of last year's? You know, you have guys like Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell walking out the door, Jordan Whittington as well. So tons of talent came in the door, but doesn't necessarily guarantee the same production that you have walking out of it. So it'll be really interesting to watch what happens there. And how do you replace the duo of Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy? Because the D tackles right now apparently look a little bit rough in spring practice. There are some guys that are starting to stand out, Jare Bledsoe being one of them, but I do think they will be picking up guys in the portal, and we'll try to figure out the best way to kind of patch that big time hole that they have created for themselves. But what I'm watching for is, does Quinn Ewers and the receivers look like they're on the same page? Tons of new guys that have to produce pretty much right away, and Quinn Ewers getting the ball in their hands is going to be the way they do that. So it's going to be really interesting to watch. Are they on the same timing? Are they on the same page when they're going through the big time plays that they're going to have to make? Is the edge rushing as strong as it seems to be from a roster perspective? And what does the rotation look like there? You have a really talented young kid in Colin Simmons coming out of high school. You have Justice Finkley there. You have Ethan Burke there. Baron Sorrell, another guy. So tons of guys to rotate in. And then finally, will they have a game is one of the biggest things I'm watching for. There is big time rain in the forecast. So hopefully the football gods and Mother Nature will smile on Austin, Texas tomorrow, and we'll be able to watch some football. But definitely something to keep your eye out on. If they do not have the game, it sounds like it will just be scrapped and they will move forward with their spring ball as scheduled, and we'll lose out on that. So hopefully that does not occur, but definitely something to keep your eye out on. At 2 p.m. as well, the Oklahoma Sooners are in action. So the storylines here are, Brent Venables going into year 3. Can he keep the train rolling going into the SEC? He did a great job last year going 10-2 in the regular season after a very disappointing first year, to be totally honest. But is he able to kind of keep that rolling? There are a lot of people doubting this team going into the SEC. Can you take advantage of that? There are a lot of people hyping up, your biggest rival in Texas while talking you down. So how do you kind of change that narrative and handle that going into the SEC? And then can Jackson Arnold reach that lofty potential? He has so much ability. He has so much arm strength and athletic ability that I would love for him to be able to, but it's going to be kind of up to the O-line. That does not look very solid right now, which is definitely something that I'll be watching for. Who are the O-linemen that look okay? Who are the O-linemen that might be problems? And who are the O-linemen that will not be on Oklahoma's roster in a couple of days here? But what I'm watching for in particular, the wide receiver group, is it as special as it looks on paper? Because when you look up and down these names, there are tons of guys that can make big-time plays for them. We talked about it yesterday with Jaden Gibson, but there are tons of guys around him. Deion Burks has been making big-time plays, so very, very excited to see what happens there. Is this defense as aggressive and fast style that that Brent Venables wants it to be? He has made a lot of money throughout his career being the guy that has hard-nosed defenses, and while OU has slowly started to become that more and more as he's been on campus, there has been, it's not quite to the Brent Venables level, and hopefully they can take another step forward. We'll be able to get an idea at the very least on Saturday. And then is Jackson Arnold the leader that they need him to be? Dylan Gabriel has moved on to Oregon. You're losing a big-time guy there where, he has that leadership ability. He has the experience that everyone kind of follows his lead. Jackson Arnold doesn't, but he can absolutely be the leader that you need him to be. So I will definitely be watching that very closely. Florida State is at 4 p.m., the last game we'll get to here. The storyline's very clear. Tons of chaos around your program. How are you going to respond to it? All of the debacles, all of the lawsuits. You just got to go play football at the end of the day if you're a Florida State Seminole right now. Jordan Travis out, DJ Uiagalelei in. Can he be the same guy that Jordan Travis was to this program? It's going to be really hard to, but apparently he's been able to make big-time strides. And then you have a lot of transfers coming in on that offensive side of the ball. Can they replace the big names leaving like Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and Trey Benson? All of the guys that were hugely important to the undefeated season they had a year ago are now out the door. So you got to make sure that you have the guys to replace them. Definitely will be watching for that. The edge rushing I'll be watching very closely. Does it look as dominant as it looks on paper? Does the interior defensive line look as worrisome as it might look on paper? Also, who are the starters on the back end of that defense? And does Fentrell Cypress kind of take the step forward that a lot of Florida State fans have been waiting for since he's got on campus? And then who's the leader of this team? You lost so many big-time leaders, including Braden Fisk and Jared Verse and all these guys that were big-time players to this team, Jordan Travis being the main among them, and you got to replace all of them. So it's going to be really interesting to see who are the guys leading the huddles, who are the guys getting in people's faces, doing the things that you don't necessarily love to do, but someone has to do. So tons of spring games to watch, tons to get to on Saturday. Definitely will have multiple TVs rolling on that day, but we're going to take our last break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some Cinderella candidates for 2024. The door is obviously open for some more Cinderellas to get into the dance. Let's figure out if they're able to possibly stay there a while. So stick with us, and we'll be right back with that.